Okay, sorry about that.
Do I hit continue?
Yes, please.
Okay. So I'm sorry to run on like this. It really is quite interesting when you see how God put things together. So my father begins to die, and I'm trying to provide care for him from a long distance. So a lot of the research we've done has been on the whole issue of distant caregiving. But at any rate, I'm providing care. Eventually he dies, and I fly back to this very high Presbyterian church, which is our home church in Birmingham, Alabama, Independent Presbyterian Church. And I'm sitting in the congregation in the family pew with my sister and the rest of our family and my father. I'm at my father's funeral and just felt surreal. When I flew back to 7th Medical Command, we had already deployed the 82nd Airborne. It was the first war that our country has been involved in where we fought in foreign countries. All the deployments for that war came from Europe. And so Saddam Hussein had sent death squads in the European theater to blow up our schools and hospitals. And so it was a very, in some ways, you're worried a little about your family. And a lot of people who deployed were leaving their children and families in harm's way. So that was a troubling part of the deployment. But anyway, so right in the middle of all that, my father died. So when I got back to 7th Medical Command, my brothers and sisters in uniform threw a memorial through, had a memorial service for my father in the middle of the war. And I was so touched by that. The general came and several others.
Mhm.
And so I was touched by that. And so I started doing the clandestine investigation of where I could do a postdoc in geriatrics. In Michigan had the MECA program. They had a National Institute of Aging postdoctoral fellowship. So I applied and I got accepted, which was kind of cool. And again, part of God opening that door a bit. And so I went through that door, and then I had to apply for long-term civilian training with the Army Medical Corps. And they gave it to me, which is just unheard of. They don't give, postdocs in aging, they're a young Army, right? And so as we got closer to the end of the war, I'm thinking I'm on my way off to Michigan. My colleagues in psychiatry said, "Hey, Parker, we're a young Army. You're going to do a child and family fellowship at Walter Reed." And so I said, I'm not going. I don't feel God's call on that, because half of them didn't believe in God anyway. And so the idea of God's call on my life to do a postdoc and didn't really have any weight with them. So anyway, somebody said, "Go talk to your boss." So I went in to see the general, this 2-star general who had the weight of the world on him. And he said, he opened the door a bit. And he said, "Parker, why in the blankety blank would I see you cussed a lot? Why would I send you off to Michigan to this postdoc? What are you going to do there anyway?" And that's when I told him, I said, "Thank you for coming to my dad's memorial. And I realized a lot of my brothers and sisters in uniform have aging parent issues. And I want to do something about that. I want to help them get ready. We force them to have, we force all military to have a deployment plan. If you don't come back, what's going to happen?" And so what are we doing for the whole aging parent issue?
Mhm.
And his whole countenance changed. And he said, "I just got a call from my family priest in Iowa." And he said, "What do you want to do, Billy, not General? What do you want to do about your mom, because she's leaving the gas on the stove and doesn't know it?" And he said, "You tell those blankety blanks you're going to Michigan." And of course, I didn't tell anybody anything. The next day, they were congratulating me for sticking to my guns. And so when I got back, I mean, when the war was over, I went to Michigan for 2 wonderful years on active duty. And that just opened up all kind of doors. It's such a exciting field that you have to have a team approach. There are all kind of disciplines involved. And while I was at Michigan, and then here's again God opening the door at UAB Medical School. Richard Almond, who's a devout Christian, the top geriatrician in the world now, I'd say, who's one of our consultants or our partners. Uh, he was trying to develop a program that was mirrored on the Michigan program, so that opened the door for an academic appointment with them. So I got out of the military as soon as I could and went to live in Alabama, our home state, and tried to make that my home. So 20 years in the military, 23 with the UAB Medical School in UA, and now we're starting this nonprofit. We're trying to make a difference in the world. So that's quick
Wow.
the story. But I hope y'all sense God's presence in those decisions. I mean, they just don't happen. There's no
Mhm.
accident to that, It's just, it's God's grace. And I hope that encourages you because he's the same God that you serve.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So at the, so can you also please share about some of the work that you envision James Houston Foundation doing? And I think I've told you, and I think I've told these fine folks that your mission statement and what you do to me is like Winter Grace all grown up. Like it's the same mission, just on a grander scale than what I envisioned when we
I try to
started.
tell people that I try to think so big that only God could do it. We couldn't possibly do it. It was all about me. So we have we have a simple concept of thinking global and acting local. So if there's a great dementia respite program down in Montgomery, Alabama, like Daphne Johnson has, she's one of our partners. We want to help her support that prototype and promote it to other communities. And in fact, that's exactly what's happening with her program. It's just taking off. People are taking that, her model for the dementia respite program, family caregiver respite program. And it's being developed by church communities all over the country now. And that's just one program, Mark. You take Ken Canfield's grandparenting ministry. Ken and I go way back. He's a great researcher. He understands research, but he really gets the grandparent thing. He was head of the Father, what's the name of it? The Father Institute or something like that back during the Bush era. But anyway, and we take a program like yours and want to do what we can to promote it and support it. If you all have we want to help you plan if you're interested, a regional faith and successful aging conference, so you bring together all of these people now that the pandemic is more or less under control, and we want to help you do that. We want to be a support to you. We have hopefully we'll have a huge distribution list, and we can write blogs, and you Debbie could write one of our blogs about what you're doing and what your passion is. That could go out to hopefully millions of older people in this country. The caliber of our panel is just so remarkable. And it's just an affirmation that people are onto something. This week, I want to promote swimming because it's without question the best form of exercise. So we're looking at writing a blog on that. And we've had two people sign on as partners. One is the fastest swimmer in the world in the 75-year-old age group. He swims in the lane next to me. And then next to him is Dennis, and I won't mention his last name because I don't remember, but he is the Olympic coach for the United States of America. And he has been that. He's not right now. And he's a very devout man, very committed to swimming. And what better people to have as zealots and advocates of swimming, a form of exercise, is probably the best form of exercise across the board for older people, no matter what their condition. And so we want to have somebody who really believes in it and who can talk people into get back in the pool again if you've never done it or if you're afraid of it. So that's an example of zoning in on the specific nature of the field of aging. You have to have experts in a variety of fields because good geriatric care is team care. And so you want to have this good team. And now we've got probably over 40 partners now that are actively involved with us. I mentioned the two top geriatric physicians. One of them was a White House physician, George Fuller, and the other one was Richard Almond, who was my boss at Yale Med School. Both of them went on to be head geriatric docs for the VA system nationally, which is, a huge issue, aging vets. So we have a team of people who are interested in helping aging vets. It kind of taps into our life review program. We'd like to see churches all across the country have a life review program so they're capturing the stories of older people. Then we've got the parent care readiness program or the age ready program that we've developed to help adult children get ready to care for their aging parents. So I could go on and on about it, but a lot of it is promoting existing ministries and just giving them, hopefully we can even provide some funding at some point for different kinds of initiatives. Right now we're just in the early stages of putting that together. But I found that caregiving is a huge human resource problem across the country. And we had 3 universities invest some funding in our work because they were interested in the parent care readiness program as a part of their human resource department. When you realize people are missing work more for aging parent issues than they are for their own kids, you know, it really gets the attention of people who make decisions in large organizations.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I want to mention before I forget, and I almost forgot, I knew I would miss this, is that we're trying to work at strategic levels too, so that we can advise denominations or mega churches on what they do. Because what's happening in the long-term care industry is that we're putting, you know, most communities now have aging in place facilities. You know, we have your long-term care spectrum of care, and you have independent living, and you have assisted living, and you have nursing home care, then you have memory care and so forth, and there are different forms of that. But even with those long-term care programs that are aging and advocate aging in place, and they're faith-based, they're often the older people who go to these institutions or these places lack late life purpose. It might be close, like we have a place called Capstone Village right here on the University of Alabama campus. And Capstone Village is right across the street from the Alabama Rec Center. And they have all these lifelong learning programs there at Capstone that are available for the people who live there. But the problem is, there's no purpose. I mean, yeah, I'd like to learn French, but what am I learning French for? You know, where's my late life purpose as a Christian? And so what we're trying to do is to look at putting these programs on university campuses, which deal with a lot of the mobility issues they have anyway, and then developing creative fostering programs that look at intergenerational connections. So the old are teaching the young, and the young are loving the old. And much like David Simpson and I, when he was 80 and I was 25. You know, that kind of relationship that I desperately needed as a young Christian. Yeah, I was in the gym the other day, and I was dressing next to one of the University of Alabama swimmers, and I said, "What?" He was a mechanical engineer, and I said, "What would you have liked to have had an older mentor during your 4 years here at the University of Alabama?" And he said, "Absolutely so. I'd love to have someone like that." And we have to figure out how to connect the old with the young, because the old are ending up with these age-graded cohort groups that they live with that are aging in time, and they're all old. And all they do is go to funerals, so to speak. And I'm exaggerating, but you get my point. We want to help them build healthy convoys, social convoys who are aging in time with them, so they really have intergenerational connectivity, and they can discover their purpose, their late life purpose, whatever that might be, or purpose is. You know? So that's a little, I'm sorry. So we're looking at how to work with these planning organizations that put together these long-term care programs, and we're trying to look at helping them be more creative in where they locate them and what they advocate there. So here we have Capstone Village with no connection with the university, with the old, with the young. When I was president, we have a West Alabama Officers Association here, and I was president of it for a couple of years. I didn't know I was signing up for 2 years. They told me it was 1 year, but anyway, so I'm running this organization, so to speak, and they're, you know, half of the organization consists of World War II veterans. So we had the Veteran of the Year in that group, all these Congressional Medal of Honor winners in the group. And so we joined with ROTC, and every older person had a younger ROTC cadet, and had dinner together, and they fostered that relationship. That's the kind of thing we're talking about trying to do. So you're capturing the story of an older person, you're valuing his life and his contribution, and he's loving you unconditionally, and all the other things we get, you know, are just blessings when we have a older person in our life most of the time. Do y'all have any questions about any of those things? I ran through them, I know, awfully quick, but you know, there's years of research behind a lot of it, believe me.
There's so many different areas that you all are in getting involved in, and I've shared with this group about the age-ready parent
Yeah.
tasks and
If
how that's
someone
something
involved in a study of that, we're happy to include you, work with you. You would be a part of a team working on that. So you have to
yeah, I'm excited about that because it's something like, to me, I enjoy like the theoretical is great, but the practical, hands-on working with people in congregations and being able to put something like that together here locally would be
Mhm.
something that really speaks to my heart.
We're talking about helping people avoid unnecessary, illegitimate suffering. It's a
Yes.
care readiness program. So you're getting ready for one of the most complicated things you'll ever engage your life in. And so we have to get ready for it. And if we don't, we're going to be caught with our pants down, just like I was with my dear father.
Mm-hmm.
My father was forced to move from this lovely home he built because he couldn't get under his thick skin and he couldn't drive. So he had mobility issues. And of course, he had short-term memory misfunction, and so he didn't remember that he wasn't supposed to drive, and that didn't sit well with my sister. And so in the
Yeah.
middle of the war, she moved him to Kirkwood, this Aging in Place program run by their church. And it was a good move in one sense, but we should have had him live with us for a while. And so he's on a tour bus riding around this area of Birmingham, it's beautiful homes. And of course, they went by his home, and he looked up tearfully and said, "That used to be my home," you know. And I thought, my goodness, you know, how unsympathetic I was to his situation. Part of it was because I was in the military, but part of it I was just unprepared.
Mm-hmm.
So caught up in my own career, my own life, and there are millions of people in this country that are just like I was. We have to help them.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've done clinical trials in the U.S. Army and U.S. Air War College. We've done longitudinal studies of military families. The military families have been kind of a trial group, so to speak, for starting this whole process. And now we've studied we've done studies with congregations. And one congregation in Texas, this large Southern Baptist congregation, decided to bring the adult child with the aging parent to the seminars. And that worked great. I'd like to see that everywhere. We need to really, that's ideal. They have some anxieties there because sometimes they're addressing things that have never been addressed, but it's done in a loving way, and it usually works out pretty well.
And I guess ideally it would be to have the aging adult and the adult child both come, but if you could either have one or the other would be huge benefit.
We think older people should be doing a better job of preparing for longer life and taking care of business. There were two physicians down in Florida we helped recently. It took over a year to unravel the mess when they both died relatively quickly.
Mm-hmm.
It was a horrible mess for their adult children. Financial mess. They had plenty of money, but it was just stuff everywhere, and it took them a year to kind of get through it all.
Mm-hmm.
And that could have been avoided, you know. I think we all have an obligation to kind of get rid of our stuff. You guys remember George Carlin? Charles, you remember George Carlin?
Uh-huh.
The comedian? He has
Yes.
a great routine he does on stuff. It'll tear you up. It's worth a watch. I apologize ahead of time if he cusses in that routine. But he really has gotten onto something that really is true, how we manage our stuff and how we accumulate our stuff, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
What about grandparenting? You know, y'all have a focus on grandparenting there? Or?
We really, in terms of the ministry, not really, but no. But
Yeah.
such an
That would be a relatively not easy, but you could take a lot of the work that Kenfield has done and import it into your Sunday school systems or whatever you might have that are educational and really have some passion around that whole idea of grandparenting. It's the highlight of my life. I'm just so overjoyed with the grandchildren I've been blessed with. Yeah, 5, and hopefully there'll be more.
I know one of your partners, one of the partners, Roger Landry, I'm reading his book, Live Long and Die Short. Yeah, it's
He's
a
not a believer.
fantastic book.
He's not a believer though.
Really?
And the whole team of people around him aren't believers either. And so he called me up, he read our book and called me up and he said, I've been looking at your research. And so we ended up talking with him and we've become friends. And, you know, I really think that his message is really solid. You know, it's faith and successful aging. He acknowledges the value of faith. I think his colleagues may not with whom he works, but he's really good at designing long-term care programs and helping. I like Roger.
Yeah, I've gained a lot from the book. I think it offers a lot of practical and both practical and meaningful suggestions.
What's the name of the book, Debbie?
Live long, die short.
Oh, Live Long, Die Short.
That
Okay.
says, doesn't it? I mean, most of us want to live long and die quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Charles, do you have any caregiving issues in your family right now?
I'm sorry, do I have any what?
Caregiving issues in your family right now?
I'm having trouble hearing. Debbie, what was the
Any
question?
any caregiving issues? in your
Caregiving, no,
family?
fortunately in my family, we don't at the present, but we can see one potential out on the horizon. My dad is 87 this year, and he's in his own home and he's doing very well. You know, there's a certain fragility that we can see building up. And so the time will come, he's aware the time will come that, you know, if there's a major illness or something, there could be a problem. But he really is hoping to be carried out of his house feet first. And so we've had a very serious conversation a few times about, you know, whether that'll happen. But currently, no. In the past, with my in-laws, we've had some caregiving issues and some sandwich generation issues to deal with. But at the present time, not. Now, of course, where I work, we see caregiving issues all the time and transition of level of care issues that go along with that. And those can be very painful and very really unsettling, dislocating kinds of things. So that's a challenge to work through.
I think the earlier a person starts to address that while they're healthy, that's the very time they need to do it. And they often, because they're healthy and doing well, don't think they need to think ahead. But really, when you get into the nitty-gritty of the legal financial issues of aging and the spiritual emotional side of aging,
Yes.
and the familial side of aging, and then the medical side of aging, it really forces you to plan ahead. If you look at and examine the facts, we found that there are about 50 different tasks involved in caring for an aging parent, and there are different domains, you know, that represent those 4 areas I just mentioned. And so it's helpful to have people kind of walk through that in kind of a manual way, you know, whether they've done this or that, have they done this. And that was the basis of the clinical trial that we did at the War College. We had 2 different groups. We had an experimental and control group, and one group got the program and one didn't. But everybody got the assessment. And one of the OC officers there completed all the tasks just based on the assessment. He felt so unprepared to care for his parents, and he was so conscientious he did them all without any help from anybody. And so it just it touches the chord. And of course, Jesus had a caregiving plan. I think Debbie and I have talked about that. You know, on the cross, he looked down and said, "Mary, John, this is your mother. Mother, this is your son." And so I think that when Jesus on the cross takes time to put together a caregiving plan, we can do it. It's really one of the most loving things you can do. A lot of people haven't even thought about capturing their parents' story. Think of all the millions of people that died of COVID, isolated in nursing homes in the last year. It breaks my heart to think about it. And all those stories are gone now. It's like burning the library every time one of these dear people dies. We don't know anything about them. It's so honoring to get those stories out of them and pull them out. And
Absolutely.
so life review is something that really any church could implement. They could have a life review program.
You're calling it life review. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, okay. That's the same terminology we use in counseling. So I just didn't know if I was hearing you. I apologize. That's very important in my work in late life transitions with caregiving and grief and loss. You know, and I agree with you. You have to, those are such sacred stories.
Mhm.
That they really, they can't be lost. And they want to reconcile their life. So it's therapeutic for the, you know, for my clients to engage in life review. And I'm even working with, you know, some of my older adults have early stage dementia. I was just contacted by somebody from the Alzheimer's Association saying, will you take more people? And I absolutely will. You know, if I assess them and I feel like they're available for, you know, they're cognitively available for counseling, they have a story to tell. And that's another whole population that's being dismissed because they have this diagnosis, and that's really heartbreaking to me.
When I was in Edinburgh, there was a church I was working with there, and they had a senior ministry, and the pastor had come to the directors of the lay leaders of that senior ministry and said, we want you to have a Wednesday service because we're not reaching the older people. They're not saved. And so they looked at me and they said, if they don't come on Sunday, why would they come? Why would they come on Wednesday? Help us, give us some ideas. So we developed a life review program for
Nice.
older people. So it didn't matter whether they were saved, if you want to call it that or not, but they were all invited. And so here you have these dear saints telling about the grace of God throughout their life and the love of God. What better witness is that, you know? So in the life review process, that's what happened. And there were a lot of people coming to that because nobody else could find any support for doing that in town in any other way. It really is a very honoring way of somebody listens to you. It's just
Yes.
such a loving thing to do.
I think we think so much about, you know, the stories of famous people or the most accomplished or the most successful as being the stories that are important, but everyone's story is important. Everyone should be valued for who they are.
Those of you that have adult children, what stories do your adult children remember of you? I mean, y'all are all probably too young to have adult children, so I'm not. They pick these stories that are so embarrassing to me to tell over and over again. Like if I have a celebration of my 70th birthday a few years ago, all of them were telling these stories, these horrible stories that made me look bad. You know, like one night, just a taste of one of the stories. I left my sister's home early from a Christmas party and drove back to Tuscaloosa from Birmingham. And I got home and I was locked out of the house. And so I said, well, I'm gonna climb in one of the dormer windows on the second floor. It's probably open. And there was a light sleet and snow, and I was in a three-piece suit. So I got up on the roof, and I realized very quickly that you can go up a roof that's slippery, but you can't come down. Too slippery. So there I sat on the top of my roof like a gargoyle, waiting for my family to come home in the snow. Cars would pull up in the front of the yard and get out and point at me and say, what are you doing up there, buddy? And no one offered to help. They just laughed and drove off. And finally, my kids arrived home. And Frank, my youngest, got out of the car. And I said, hey, Frank, you got to help me out. And he couldn't believe it. And then what happened after that, I'll just leave it as a family. That's one in my history. But anyway, that's what happened. Those stories will be told over and over again, but there are other stories that they don't know anything about. And they need to be told.
Absolutely.
And would say, don't visit your sins on the next generation.
So I lived next door to my grandparents till I was 10. And there are so many questions I wish I had asked, but I didn't know. I didn't even know that it wasn't anything that interested me, you know, back then. But boy, I would love to have had more stories.
We have a number of our folks have written memoirs, and for some people, you know, that's something that they can do, enjoy doing. My dad has written his, and gathered up some notes of my mom's before she passed away, and has put them together, and then has collected a remembrance book that his grandmother put together, and he's been bundling this all
Oh,
up.
wow.
So it's kind of a family legacy package.
You could
Now,
teach something right from that.
he tells stories a certain way. We remember some of the same stories a little differently. So, when it comes time for whether it's I remember my dad's retirement celebration, it turned into a little bit of a roast because there were some stories we remember differently than he did.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. Yeah, another piece of this too does have to do with dementia, because one of the keys to how people negotiate their life satisfaction dementia. I mean, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. Is how they resolve some of these issues from earlier days. If they need to find forgiveness, if they need to find acceptance, if there's some trauma that's unresolved, and if it stays unresolved, then their ability to thrive to the level that they can in the progression of Alzheimer's or other dementia is severely compromised. And
Two,
we see that every day in healthcare.
two of the stories I'll tell you real quickly. Danny Potts is a neurologist who worked with us. And when his father was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, he didn't know it. So being a neurologist, he was embarrassed. He had an attorney friend tell him, your dad has Alzheimer's. So eventually Danny's dad couldn't recognize him. And he was problematic, real strong guy, but lost, of course, suffering from mid-stage Alzheimer's. And he was an old lumberjack. And when he was at mid-stage, they couldn't find any facility that could handle him. And finally found a place where there was an art therapist who worked with him, and he discovered the capacity to do these beautiful watercolor drawings. He did over 400 of them. They've been studied all over the world now.
Wow.
And he did these beautiful drawings. And the last one he did was of one of those old saws without the handle. It was a black and white, didn't have any colors in it. And so the handles had been removed, and we think that that was a word picture for what happens with Alzheimer's. It takes the handles off your life. And so I'm sitting up in our cabin, river cabin, and over the fireplace is one of those old saws with the handles on it. And I felt led of the Holy Spirit to give it to Danny, as a gift, and say, now that your dad is deceased, the handles are back on, of course. And here's the saw, it's kind of a word picture, and it was a very meaningful moment for both of us. And then the second story, and that whole thing, Danny he writes beautiful poetry. He's one of the most gifted singers you could ever have. What a speaker he would do at a conference. I mean, he's just a beautiful man, beautiful countenance, and he stays on top of the research literature. He's the kind of person you want to ask about what's his new drug coming out. Is it going to make a difference? And he would tell you the PIs behind the studies, behind the new drug are very cautious. And there are a lot of other risk factors in this new drug. But anyway, that's the kind of expertise we want to be able to draw on when we need to. But the story I left out of my father's story is when the war was over and I finished the postdoc in Michigan, my wife took me to my father's prep school, or Darlington, in Rome, Georgia. And when I went there, they had these archives of my father, and it was there that I learned that he had an all-A average. He was on the honor council, that he played 5 musical instruments, that he had the world record in the 100-yard dash for over a year.
Oh my
Kind of like, and I have his track shoes sitting above me right here, with a picture of him, when he was on the track team. And of course, I would have loved it. And he had a scholarship to Georgia Tech. I didn't know any of that about my dad. Wow. So I wear this Darlington patch on my jacket. If I ever speak at a conference local near you guys, you'll see me wearing the patch. And people say, what's that about Darlington? And I tell them the story. Get your dad's story. Capture it before it's too late, So anyway, it's just a wonderful area to be in. And we're so privileged to have people like Debbie pulling things together in your area. What do y'all see ahead for yourselves? And how can I help you?
That sounds like a Debbie question.
Oh, I was hoping somebody else would. Well, what do we see ahead for ourselves? I think right now trying to grow the people that we're reaching, making more inroads into the local congregations to share the importance of this work, the importance of the ministry, bringing awareness. The idea of putting together a conference, our resource fairs, I think, are growing and have been really helpful. I think there's a lot of opportunity there.
We've actually thought about having a representative from every state who would work with us, and we would help them develop these resource directories that could be used in their own setting. For example, one of the resources we have locally is the UAB Driver's Assessment Clinic. I know all of you have had clients that have had issues of mobility and whether they should drive or continue to drive or not. And the UAB Medical School Driver's Assessment Clinic evaluates the person's medical capacity to drive. If there's a condition that could be corrected, like hearing or sight, they do it. And then they give them an actual driver's test. They don't have authority to remove the driver's test, but they do have that medical authority. Can advise the family about what to do rather than looking like, I'm going to take your car away, like my sister was doing with my father. Just resulted in tension and fighting. And so it's really good to have to know what resources you have locally, and you can draw on those. When you do a conference, you all come together, you get to know each other. And I think I sent you, Debbie, some examples of some of the conferences we've done here that were actually black and white churches working together for the first time in the history of Tuscaloosa, Alabama. They just don't work together. And it was a wonderful success, by God's grace.
And developing a storehouse or a database of resources around the area, it's part of what we're doing, but doing it on a statewide basis it's almost a kind of a daunting process, but
well, there's some things
so
like
important.
you want to have on your list, like you probably have one major medical school in Maryland that has a geriatric medicine program, right?
We
You
do.
want to connect to that program because it's unique. In other cases, you've got, a broader set, spectrum of people that who can help you locally, Knowing who the local geriatric docs are is an important issue, because they really did this in general. Most of them really did it.
It's been interesting to me. The county that I'm in Maryland, that Lisa and Joyce and I are in, we have the Office on Aging is phenomenal.
Yeah.
You go to the next county, Prince George's County, and what they have is nearly non-existent.
So true. That's so true for the area agencies of aging. You can have a marvelous one, and you can have one that just doesn't get it.
That's true in Southern Maryland as well. Calvert, where I am, is quite good, but that's not true all over. And as far as geriatric care, we have very, very little. We have, last I knew, we have one PA that specializes in geriatrics in the county. That's it.
Wow.
It's a desert.
We had,
It is. We have some good ones, Deb.
on our partner list, you can look up for Gina Harold. I love her because she has such a wonderful sense of humor and such a sweet faith. And she said, when I have her speak to my classes at the university, she'd always say, I am the best geriatric physician in the entire. And of course, you can see it coming. I'm the only geriatric physician in Tuscaloosa County. And so and they keep making a living. They really struggle the way insurances are provided. They really struggle to make enough money to really do well. And so that's something else that we haven't thought out really on a national level. And then the elder law attorneys, that's another specialty that we, need to do the legal financial side of preparing for death and dying. And so we have a team of people like that. We have one of the few elder law clinics that is affiliated with our law school. And so the students really go through that program and get a good chance to find out whether that's for them.
Fortunately, we have a number of, I've been able to connect with a number of elder care attorneys. And that is I think there are probably more elder care attorneys in the region than there are geriatric physicians for certainly.
We have one, do you know Dr. Lazarus, Debbie?
I do. Yeah, I've seen him speak. I haven't actually.
Yeah, so he's probably the most pronounced in Howard County. And then certainly at the University of Maryland, Diane Martin heads up their geriatric. I know you know Diane.
Yeah, she's
So,
amazing.
she is amazing. They lost her at McDaniel
Yeah,
University
they
of
did.
Maryland.
She
NAFTA.
moved on to
She moved on.
Yeah.
Does she have a good sense of humor?
Diane, yeah, she has a good sense of humor, I think.
All right, well, I have a physician joke you can tell real quick. Experimental psychologists have decided to stop using rats and start using attorneys instead. There are three primary reasons for that. The first is there are more attorneys than there are rats, so they're more available. The second is you can get attorneys to do things you can't get rats to do. And the third reason is you can get, they found that they were bonding more with the rats than they were with the attorneys, and so it was easy to work with attorneys. But anyway, I'm sorry, it's not such a funny joke when you think about it, but I find that attorneys, really, in our law school, so few of them have an interest in elder law, and we do everything we can to kind of engage them in that process so that more will go into that field of practice. And I'm so thankful you have them up where you are. That doesn't surprise me at all.
Unfortunately, I've just met a pair of sisters who are both in elder law,
Wow.
and they opened their own practice, particularly because they wanted to practice law as a way of serving the seniors. Not, they had a very different. They weren't able to practice the way that they felt they should, and so they've opened their own practice together to do it from a place of service.
Well, I've looked at some of the things that y'all have done already, and it's a wonderful ministry you have there. And we want to do everything we can to encourage you and uplift you. And if, Debbie, if you or members of your board or members of your team want to be a part of some of the work teams that we're putting together on a national level, we're happy to include you and would be honored to have you alongside of working with us. And then if you decide you want to do a regional conference or something like that, or you want to do an age-ready program, we can help you do that and have you be a part of that. And if you want to write a chapter or two or a blog for us, we can kind of promote your program in that way. And there are probably other things that we could do, but I'm just thinking off the top of my head. And it's just such an honor and encouragement to run into somebody like y'all and just to have you do what you do. It's just marvelous. I'm just so proud of you guys.
Thank you. You're very kind. It's just a delight to connect with you. I'm just so glad that I read that footnote in your book and followed up on it, and that we've been able to connect and start to work together. It's been a real joy. I'm looking forward to a lot of collaboration.
Well, I hope we can get this other book done. Jim Houston is a remarkable man. Charles, I don't know if you've read any, you know anything about Jim, but he was a colleague and friend to C.S. Lewis at Oxford. And the Paeta model of education that they used in those days when Jim was at Oxford and C.S. Lewis was there and J.R. Tolkien, that whole crew. They had a model of education. It was a holistic model that was interested in the body, mind, soul, and spirit development of their students. And it was all a friendship model, a relationship model, which is what we want to do. And so Jim models for the rest of us, how do you love people? How do you develop friendships? Think about the academic world now, it's stale and stuffy, and you got to call your professor. You wouldn't even think about calling them their first name, or maybe you wouldn't. I don't know. But the point is that relationship model is so important when we think about aging. We already looked at the effects of when you're a convoy, you no longer have access to your social convoy. It can be devastating. And so we have to learn to help people build strong convoys, that are intergenerational and have purpose hardwired into it, So there's so many wonderful things that can be done at your level, and I'm just, again, so excited that we know you now, and we can hopefully figure out some ways we can help you and work together. You help us by just being an encouragement. First thing I'm going to do is tell some of our board what, how wonderful you guys are. I'm supposed to meet with some of them tomorrow. So, and they all have a sense of humor, and most of them like to drink scotch. That's the common denominator. I'm not sure.
That is,
Joyce, who is that?
pardon me?
I was asking Joyce who that was. Came into her.
Oh, that was my husband, sorry. He was wondering what he should do with what he just cooked on the grill.
There you have it.
He should invite us all over for
Yeah.
dinner, Tom.
I know.
I'm on my way, Joyce. I'll be over in a little bit.
Okay, come on over. I'd love it.
Well, listen, it's such an honor to talk to you. I don't want to take up any more of your time, but I just, again, I cannot thank you enough for supporting Debbie and what she's out doing. And I think we really want to get to know each other better over time so we can kind of work together more closely. You find a niche that we can help you with, we want to do that. We've got some expert on our panel, on our partner list that can help you, believe me. And then we want to promote what you're doing too. So.
Very good.
Thank you so much. I just appreciate you spending time with us and being such an encouragement and looking forward to moving ahead together.
Well, we
Thank
had
you.
a long caregiving night last night, so I'm not very sharp this evening, but I look forward to getting to know y'all better, and thank you so much for the time.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you. And talk with you soon.
Sure,
Been a privilege. Thank you.
feel the same
Right.
way.
Have a wonderful evening.
See you.
Thank you, Michael.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, nice. What an interesting man.
Mm-hmm.
It was a little
Really?
hard to hear him at times. It
I
was really
couldn't-
muffled.
Yes, I couldn't catch what he was saying a lot of the time.
Yes,
but
ditto
it's
that.
very interesting
Yeah.
what I did hear.
That's
His
like when I talked to him
mouth
on the
dropped below the plane and made
Yeah.
it.
That's hard too. I know, I'll talk to him on the phone and with his southern accent and he talks really fast. It's a very different combination.
I remember you
Unique
saying that, yeah.
combination.
This is case at hand why I'm ready to end telehealth with counseling, because that's what's happening.
Mhm.
You know, they're getting it. It's really difficult.
Can you end
Hope
it
you were able
now,
to cut-
or what?
I'm sorry?
What do you have to wait for, Lisa, to end it? To end telehealth?
Oh, no, we can see people in the
Okay.
office. It's just, you have to go through a lot to make that happen. But, but anyway, I don't want to digress. And I'm actually going to have to head out
Oh,
because
so
I
you
have
said-
caregiving issues tonight. So when he was talking about caregivers, I was like, yes, my husband has to get to College Park so I have to go be with my 22-year-old son that, has a disability because we have no caregiver. So I'm going to have to scoot. I'm sorry.
Well, Lisa, I'm glad you're here and you're always in our prayers. And
Oh,
Just-
thank you.
Good to see you, Lisa.
It was good to see you. That was so awesome. I could have probably talked to him for a long time.
yeah,
The New Yorker and the Southerner. There you go.
yeah.
That accent helped. He's a very interesting guy. Good night.
Really quite a story, really interesting
Absolutely.
career.
Yeah,
And
I would like to hear more about the Life Review program, because I'm going to guess that might be something that would catch clergy's attention, like a tangible program that they go, oh, you can kind of, you can kind of give this to our parish. I'm just thinking,
Yep.
anyway, but to be
There's another piece to that, and I know you got to go.
Yeah.
Upper Room Ministries, and I don't know if they're still doing it or not,
Ah.
but Tom Alvin and Upper Room Ministries were doing something called Spiritual Legacies. People
Yes.
plan the other aspects of their legacy, but what spiritual legacy do you want to leave? And those two things would partner up very well, Life Review and spiritual legacy. And if you could package that. And I had talked to Tom at one point at a conference about
Mhm.
coming and doing a presentation at Asbury, and he said, well, I'm kind of moving towards retirement, but I can connect you. And he never did, and then he retired. So I'm going to go back and bug him because I know him from another connection.
Okay.
And I'm going to see if I can kind of get some of that information, because
if
that
you
would
could
be
Right.
speak, if you could speak to us about that, or to you individually and share with us, that would be fabulous.
Yeah, that would be, I think, really optimal, Charles. I love that pairing.
yeah.
And I can attest to Mike, is that his first name? Gosh, I don't remember.
Yeah, Mike. Yeah.
Mike,
Uh-oh.
but you know, people just want to really be heard. They just want
Yeah.
someone to hear their story, you know. So, all right. On that
Absolutely.
note, it was great seeing you all. I'll see
Great
you
to see you. Thanks for
Yeah.
coming.
next month. That's my husband's birthday, which may not matter because I work. So, but hopefully I can kind of pop into something.
Sounds good.
All right.
Have a safe
Bye,
trip down to
all.
College Park.
Bye-bye.
Yeah,
Have a
I,
good rest of the
I
week,
can't believe he has to
Lisa.
go. It's because our other son left something. Our other son on the spectrum left something at home that he needs for his percussion festival. I mean, it's the beat goes on.
Yeah, and the beat goes on.
By the way, Debbie, you're still recording.
Oh,
Oh no.
don't worry. I can cut that off.